Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fantabulous, thirsty Thursday. Oh, you're all looking amazing, by the way, and we're going to get straight into the meat and potatoes, as today is going to be a day where the videos are more than likely going to really get under some people's skin, but there's some things that we've got to cover, there's some things we've got to say, because you know me, this is about me and you, sitting together, having a chat, like mates, do you know what I mean? Sitting around a campfire, maybe, all of us with a nice fire burning and, you know, crackling away as we tell each other stories. And, you know, that's what I want this to be over here. You know, like we're all mates having a chat down the pub even, you know, and shooting the shit, as I think they say in the US. Shooting the shit. So let's shoot some shit, because we're talking about the Idaho 4 case and lies and liars. And it's really starting to grate on me. Right, it's really starting to grate on me, and I'm guessing that there's some people out in this community who certain things are starting to grate on them too. Now, one of the things that's starting to grate on me, or started to grate on me a long time ago, was certain family members around this crime who, despite the absolute atrocity and not wishing this upon them at all, and it's horrendous, it's horrible, what they've done in the aftermath is just bewildering at best, and some may say unforgivable at worst, but we'll talk about that later on today. In this video, again, it's lies and liars, because I try and talk to everybody in the comments, right? I try and be one of these creators who, if you've dedicated your time to me, the absolute least I can do is reciprocate. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and get in the weeds. And look, we all only have so many hours in the day, and it's not always possible, but I try and do it as much as possible. And that's both sides of the fence. You know, I don't just talk to people who support what I say or agree with what I say. There's certain people who are not pricks who may say they don't agree. And you know, I've got people around the channel who don't agree with everything I say, perhaps a lot of what I say, but we still get along. We're still you know, able to communicate together and get along, because ultimately we all think different things. But what fucking grinds my gears more than anything, and yeah, I swear on this channel, I swear, I know it's not for everyone, but look, if you're over here and you're listening to me, you've got to put up with it. If you don't want to listen to it, if you can't put up with it, then fuck off and go and listen to someone else who don't, and there's a little bit more to your taste. Because when I'm passionate about something, and when something's grinding my gears, then sometimes I'll swear about it. And look, you'd rather be fucked than killed, wouldn't you? There you go, let's have it. So yeah, the thing that really grinds my gears is when people, they're trying to support their narrative. Do you know what I mean? I get it. There's people who believe Bryan Kohberger did this crime, and they won't entertain any single piece of evidence that may even suggest, hint that he could potentially be innocent of this crime, or that there is other people involved in this crime either. And perhaps this wasn't about a lone, single, solitary person going into this house and doing this horrendous act. That perhaps there's just more to it. I don't want to hear it. And instead, they start quoting lies, because that's telling me that, look, you don't even listen to my videos. I had someone yesterday saying, oh, you're constantly flip-flopping. How the fuck am I constantly flip-flopping? I think I've been one of the original people who have supported the ideology that Bryan Kohberger could be innocent of this crime. And certainly there are other creators around, JB Gunner, Jules of all trades, you know, I can't think of many more, I must admit, but there are Jay Ombre, for instance. I would say that he's flip-flopped somewhat, but he's hard in the paint now with Bryan Kohberger not being guilty of this crime. I don't think anybody could argue that, whether you agree with the things that he says or not. But there are a few creators, only a few creators, who are willing to understand that some of the things in this case don't sit right, they're not right, and it is what it is. But the people who are watching content, I have to call them out, and I have to call certain creators out. And people will come to me, and like just yesterday, Bryan Kohberger was fired from his job, and that's why he was pissed off. But these people haven't read the docs. Now, if anybody has gone through the docs with the likes of myself or the likes of Jules did a video yesterday, I believe, a few hours back, and specifically even broke that section down that says that Bryan Kohberger wasn't fired. But you've literally still got people saying Bryan Kohberger was fired from his job and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I had somebody else who turned around and say, well, Bryan Kohberger's sister, she saw Bryan Kohberger cleaning all his car out, was cleaning it out for days, spent days cleaning it out. And I'm thinking, send me the link to that. Send me the link that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Bryan Kohberger's sister witnessed Bryan Kohberger cleaning his car for days. I can't work it out. And I can't work it out why people who believe that Bryan Kohberger did this crime always have to resort back to specific stories that come from specific people. And let's just look at this for a second. This is your problem here, right? This is your problem. And this drives me insane. So we've got Megyn Kelly, right? Megyn Kelly, 3.4 million subscribers, and her videos on the Idaho 4 case. On this one, shocking new details raise questions about eyewitness Kohberger murders. Utter bollocks in this, complete and utter bollocks. And who's she talking to? The captain of bollocks. Fucking the Blumberbus. 88,000 views that got. 88,000 views. This one here, Megyn Kelly lays out her theory for Bryan Kohberger's motive in the Idaho murders with Howard Blumber. 500,000 people watched that video. 500,000 people. The trial ahead, Idaho murders, Bryan Kohberger, Megyn Kelly show special, 153,000 people, 176,000 people. Another one with Howard Blum, 68,000 people, 73,000 people. And this is someone who very, very fucking clearly isn't reading the court docs, isn't going through this case. They don't know, and they won't entertain any shred of evidence that may suggest that Bryan Kohberger not only may not have done this crime, but it could be somebody else who has done this crime. We've got another one here, Christina fucking Randall. Do you know what I mean? Be kind to everybody. Be kind to everybody, especially in the comments. Especially in the comments. Christina Randall, 241,000 people watched this video. This one here, nearly 600,000 people watched this video, and they are consistently getting details wrong. This one here, 618,000 people, 328,000 people. DNA found on a Maddie Mogan's fingernail. You've got JLR, who he's got 300,000 subscribers nearly, telling people that Bryan Kohberger's goose is cooked because his fucking DNA was found under Madison Mogan's fingernail. Going on to X, Twitter, and telling people the same. And then you've got people that come over here and tell me that Bryan Kohberger, no, he's definitely done. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but with his DNA under Madison Mogan's fingernail, that's fucking done deal. Nancy Disgrace, 135k, 272k, 615 fucking thousand people are listening to people who have got one very specific fucking narrative, and that is nail Bryan Kohberger to the wall. Nail Bryan Kohberger to the wall. Another one here, News Nation. We all know News Nation. This video here, 1.7 million views that got, which is talking utter shite. Utter shite. Chilling text from Night of Idaho Murders release with their spin on it, which, to be fair, that didn't really do well because people are starting to see what they're doing around the Idaho 4 case. But they have been antagonists of utter bollocks. I believe these were the main contributor to the Bryan Kohberger got sacked from his job and that was the straw that broke the camel's back narrative. And even we've had some more obscure ones like Lazy Masquerade. Now, I love Lazy Masquerade, but I'll tell you what, I haven't listened to one video that this guy has done since he did this video, which he had no place to do. The disturbing timeline of Idaho student murders, which was complete and utter wrong, and nearly 500,000 people were subjected to watching it. So can you wonder at it, right? when you've got this crime and people's conduit to information are people who, I think this is the issue, right? Is certain creators like Megyn Kelly, for instance, and Christina Randall, they make hundreds and hundreds of £1,000s a year, hundreds of thousands off back end deals and residual earnings off the channel, but they want to stay current. They want to stay relevant, and sometimes in order to do that you look at what's a hot topic and you do a video. But what they haven't done is they haven't made this case every single fucking day. They haven't lived it, they haven't breathed it. They don't wake up in the morning and double check to make sure what's going on, and they don't go through the court docs. And when that massive great court drop happened, they don't themselves sit there and spend hours going over it and making notes and reading it and allowing a voice recording to do it and then summarizing it and then coming to you guys and talking about it, or doing lives and sitting there with you for hours while we go over it together. You know, Jules recently doing 2 and 3 and 4 hour lives to use her time to go over these docs with you and react to them and speak about them, to discuss them, to pull out segments from them, and to show where these bigger channels who have no place in these crimes are fucking lying to people, absolutely lying to people. Do you know what I mean? It's insanity. It smashes my brain. And it's what are the facts in the Idaho 4 case? What are the facts? The fact is Bryan Kohberger's been accused. That's a fact. That's one fact. Bryan Kohberger's been accused. What's another fact? Well, he should be entitled to a fair trial. He should be entitled to a fair trial. That's another fact. Another fact should be that the defense by now should rarely have all discovery, every single thing that the prosecution intends to bring to trial to help provide the proof that Bryan Kohberger did this crime, so that the defense can properly get the ducks in a row in court. They should have that by now. That's another fact. A fact that isn't right. They don't. Bryan Kohberger drives a white Hyundai Elantra. That's a fact. There was a car that appears to be similar to Bryan Kohberger's caught on a video near 1122 King Road. That's another fact. That's another fact. Is it Bryan Kohberger? Bryan Kohberger was seen at 1122 King Road. That's not a fact. That's not a fact, because we don't know that yet. We don't know. There is evidence that perhaps Bryan Kohberger's phone may have been switched off around the time of this crime. That's a fact. Bryan Kohberger's phone was switched off in order to stop people from knowing where he was while this crime was happening. That's not a fact. That is speculation. That is speculation. Bryan Kohberger stalked these victims. That's not a fact. What is a fact is that both the defense and the prosecution have stipulated in court that there is not evidence of Bryan Kohberger stalking, messaging any of the victims. There is not any connection to them. Bryan Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife and sheath off of Amazon. That is not a fact. It is not a fact. Is it a fact that Ann Taylor was trying to restrict the click activity on Bryan Kohberger's Amazon account? That's a fact. And why is it? Because the click data can be manipulated. And what she didn't want to do was for the prosecution to be able to take a segment of that data, segment of the click activity, not purchase activity, click activity. So they're not talking about purchasing, they're talking about what Bryan Kohberger was searching on. And I spoke about this. You can go on to Amazon and you can start looking at something and then go down a rabbit hole. Go down a rabbit hole because, what other things that people who looked at this also looked at this. Oh, let's have a look at that. People who also looked at these looked at this. Oh, and it leads you somewhere else. If you don't show the entire story and you just take a snippet from it, it can paint a very, very different picture, and that can be manipulated. Very much like the phone data, for instance. If you take a small segment of it and just show that small proportion of it, it doesn't look good. If you show the bigger picture, like, for instance, how Bryan Kohberger, how the stalker narrative started was Bryan Bryan Kohberger has been to Moscow, Idaho 12 times. If you just hear that on the lead up to the crimes, if you just hear that, what's it sound like? It sounds like Bryan Kohberger's fucking stalking. But if you then add context to it and say, well, Bryan Kohberger went there on these days, but you know exactly where he went, you know on the days that he didn't fucking stop, you know that he didn't go anywhere near this property, what does it then tell you? Well, it doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you that a guy who was in Washington frequented Moscow, Idaho, and went to the petrol station, went to the shops, bought some food, got some different bits and pieces, probably on his way to the park that he frequented, not that far from the place. Do you know what I mean? So it's adding context. But if you remove that context and just leave that, and then let a PCA go out into the wild and do its fucking damage, it then leads to these Muppets, who we've just fucking talking about, to pluck things out and pass it off to millions of people who then subsequently filter into the comment section with their bollocks and bullshit that isn't true. Fact is this: Bryan Kohberger could have done this crime. Could have done it. But there has been no solid evidence that should leave anybody in the position right now to believe that he did this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'll tell you fucking for why. And there's multiple reasons, but one very specific reason, right? And that is that at this crime scene, there was at least 3 other DNA samples found. DNA samples found in the immediate area of this crime. And why did they not get looked into? Because the FBI told the lead investigator to look at this name, and that, at that point, took priority. That took priority, and from that point forward, it was Operation Bryan Kohberger, and everything else got put on the back burner. Now, however they want to talk about why that happened and CODIS and all that bollocks, I'm not interested in it. The real reason was there was other DNA there that should have been looked into. It wasn't looked into because the FBI handed off Bryan Kohberger's name. And why did they hand off Bryan Kohberger's name? Very likely because Bryan Kohberger was already being looked into. He was already being surveilled because they believed that he was involved in another crime in Pennsylvania that it turns out that he had nothing to fucking do with. And when Bryan Kohberger did get asked eventually for his DNA, guess what? He handed it over willingly. And do you know what? There's DNA, unknown DNA at the crime scene, or DNA that hasn't gone through the whole 9 yards that Bryan Kohberger's has. And do you know what? DNA at a crime scene is DNA. It's evidence. Every day of the week. And twice on a fucking Sunday. Mwah.